I used to think my life was steady. Not exciting, not perfect, just steady. I told Lena that once while we were washing dishes. I said I like boring. Boring means safe. She laughed and nudged my shoulder. You're 32. She said, you talk like an old man. I shrugged and looked at the little plastic cup in the sink. I've got everything I want, I told her. A job, a home, a kid who thinks I'm a superhero. She smiled too fast. I noticed it, but I ignored it. I always ignored small things. That's how I kept peace. That night at dinner, climbed into my lap and said, Dad, you promised to read the dinosaur book. I kissed his hair. After bath, I told him. Deal. He held out his tiny hand. Deal. Lena watched. Usin said softly, he worships you. I laughed. Good, I said. I earned it. She opened her mouth, like she wanted to say more, then looked away. I asked, what? She shook her head. Nothing, just tired. I accepted that answer because I always did. Thought love meant trusting the silence. The hospital visit felt routine. He had a fever that wouldn't break. Lena paced while I filled out forms. The nurse said, we'll run some tests. I nodded. Whatever you need. A doctor stepped in later and said, Sir, we need a quick blood sample from you. I blinked. From me? He adjusted his glasses. Standard precaution. I rolled up my sleeve. Fine, I said. Lena stood very still. I joked, relax. They're not stealing my soul. She didn't laugh. The needle slid in. I felt nothing. I wish it had hurt more. We waited in a white room that smelled like plastic. I tapped my foot. Lena whispered. He's going to be okay, I said. Of course he is. The doctor returned with a folder pressed tight to his chest. He didn't. Sit. He looked at me like I was fragile glass. There's a discrepancy, he said. I frowned. What kind? He cleared his throat. The blood type doesn't align. I laughed. You mixed up papers? He didn't smile. I stopped. Laughing. Say it clearly, I told him. He said, you are not the biological father. The room went silent, except for the hum of a machine. I stared at him and said, that's impossible. He answered gently, I'm sorry. I looked at Lena. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I said her name once. Lena. She whispered, not here. I stood up so fast the chair scraped. Tell me, I said. My voice sounded calm, which scared me. She grabbed my arm. Please sit. I pulled away. Tell me now. The doctor stepped back and murmured, I'll give you privacy. The door clicked shut. I felt my chest collapse inward. I asked, how long? She covered her face. Years, she said. The word hit like a hammer. I laughed again, but it came out broken. Years, I repeated. She nodded. It was a mistake, she whispered. I leaned against the wall. Mistake is forgetting milk, I said. This is a life, she cried. I was scared. I looked at the hallway where our son slept. In another room, he calls me Dad, I said. She sobbed, you are his dad. I shook my head slowly. No, I answered. I'm the man you lied to. We drove home in silence. The streetlights blurred. When we stepped into the kitchen, the clock ticked louder than usual. I said quietly, talk. She gripped the counter. It happened once. I stared at her back. Once created a child, I replied. She turned around. I was going to tell you, I asked. When? She didn't answer. Stepped closer. When? She whispered. Never. I hoped it would disappear. I laughed without humor. Children don't disappear, I said. Truth doesn't either. My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed steady. She reached for me. I love you, she said. I stepped back. Love isn't this, I told her. She cried, I didn't want to lose you. I pointed upstairs. You lost me the day he was born, I said. The words tasted like metal. She whispered, please don't leave. I looked at the ceiling. I pictured his small face. I said, I don't know who I am in this house. She slid to the floor. You're my husband. I shook my head. I'm a stranger standing. In a stranger's life, I answered, and I don't recognize any of it. The house felt cold. I sat at the table and stared at my hands. Lena sobbed behind me. I didn't turn around. I said, "Does he know?" She choked out, "No." I nodded slowly. "Good," I whispered. My throat burned. "He's innocent." She crawled closer and said, "So are we." I looked at her then. I said softly, "Only he is." The clock kept ticking. Every second felt like a door closing. I realized I couldn't remember the man I was that morning. I felt hollow, scraped clean, like someone erased me and left a shape behind. I sat there and understood one final thing. My life hadn't cracked. It had shattered. I was still breathing inside the ruins. I pretended nothing changed. That became my job. I woke up, made coffee, packed lunches, and said, "Morning, buddy," when he ran into the kitchen. He wrapped his arms around my waist and said, "You're warm." I laughed softly. "That's because I'm magic," I told him. He grinned. "Mom says you're not magic." I looked at Lena. She stood frozen by the sink. I said, "Don't listen to her," he whispered. "I believe you." My chest tightened. I hugged him longer than usual. Lena watched me like she was waiting for a verdict I refused to deliver. At night, she followed me into the hallway and said, "We can't keep doing this." I kept walking. "Doing what?" I asked. She grabbed my arm, pretending I looked down at her hand. "You're good at pretending," I said quietly. She flinched. "Please talk to me." I answered, "I am talking." She shook her head. "Not like this." I leaned against the wall. "Then how?" She whispered like my husband. The word stung. I said, "I don't know if I'm him anymore." Her eyes filled. "You are," she insisted. I looked past her. "Feel like a guest." The boy padded out of his room and said, "Why are you awake?" I forced a smile. "Go back to bed," I told him. He rubbed his eyes. I heard voices. Lena knelt. "We're fine," she said quickly. He looked at me. "Are you mad?" I shook my head. "Never at you." He nodded and hugged my leg. "Good," he said. "I don't like when people are mad." I swallowed hard. "Neither do I," he shuffled back upstairs. The silence he left behind was heavy. Lena whispered, "See what we're risking?" I replied, "You already risked it." Weeks passed. Like that. Small talk. Fake smiles. Every hug from him felt like a knife and a blessing at the same time. One evening, Lena cornered me in the kitchen and said, "I can't breathe in this house." I answered, "I've been suffocating for years," she cried. "I told you it was a mistake." I slammed my hand on the counter. "Stop calling him a mistake," I snapped. She covered her mouth. "That's not what I meant." My head. "You don't get to rewrite words." I was scared. I said, "I'm still scared." Her sister Mara showed up without warning. She stepped inside and said, "You look terrible." I crossed my arms. "Thanks." She glanced at Lena. "We need to talk." I laughed. "Another confession?" Mara frowned. "Don't be cruel," I answered. "Cruel is subjective," she said. "It was complicated." I stared at her. "It wasn't complicated," I replied. "It was a choice." Lena cried. "Stop." Mara stepped closer. "People mess up." I said, "People destroy lives," she snapped. "You're acting like a victim." I leaned in. "Because I am." Mara softened her voice. "You still have a family." I looked upstairs. "Do I?" I asked. She hesitated. Lena whispered, "Please don't do this in front of her." Said, "I've been quiet long enough." Mara sighed. "What do you want?" The question stunned me. I answered slowly. "I want the truth to stop echoing in my head." Lena reached for me. "I'm here." I stepped back. "Hear the echo," I said. Her face crumpled. Mara muttered, "This isn't helping." I replied, "Nothing helps." The room felt too small for all the lies breathing inside it. That night I packed a bag. Lena stood in the doorway and said, "Where are you going?" I zipped it shut. "Out," she whispered. "For how long?" I met her eyes. "I don't know." She shook her head. You can't leave him. My voice broke. Don't use him to chain me here, she cried. He needs you, I answered. I need air. She grabbed my sleeve. Please stay. I gently pulled away. If I stay, I'll disappear, I told her. She slid down the wall. You're disappearing anyway. I said, at least this way I choose it. The apartment I rented smelled empty. I sat on the floor and listened to the quiet. My phone buzzed with Lena's name. I let it ring. A message appeared. He keeps asking for you. I pressed my palms to my eyes. I whispered, I'm sorry. The room didn't answer. We played every birthday, every bedtime story, every scraped knee I kissed. I asked the ceiling was any of it real? My voice echoed back, small and broken. I hated Lena for the lie. I hated myself for still loving the child inside it. Days blurred together. Caleb called once and said, You sound dead. I laughed weakly. Close enough, he asked. Do you want to talk? I answered. I don't know what to say, he replied. Say anything. I whispered. I miss him. Caleb was quiet for a second. That makes sense, he said. I shook my head even though he couldn't see me. It shouldn't. He answered. Love doesn't follow rules. I stared at the wall. Neither does betrayal, I said. He sighed. You're allowed to feel both. I muttered. It feels like drowning. Each night the silence grew louder. I lay in bed and heard his laugh in my head. I heard Lena crying in the kitchen. I heard Mara saying, It was complicated. I whispered into the dark. No, it wasn't. The truth sat on my chest like a weight I couldn't push off. I realized the secret wasn't dying, it was growing, pretending hurt more than knowing. I pressed my hand over my heart and said out loud, I can't live like this. The room stayed silent, but the words felt final. Silence had become another lie, and I was done protecting it. Distance didn't feel dramatic. It felt quiet. I sat across from Caleb in a cheap diner and stirred coffee I didn't want. He watched me for a full minute and said, You look like a ghost. I shrugged. I feel worse. He leaned back. Then talk. I shook my head. There's nothing left to say. He laughed once. That's a lie. I met his eyes. Everything is a lie. He pointed at me. Start there. My throat tightened. I whispered I raised a child. That isn't mine. Saying it out loud scraped something raw inside me. Caleb didn't pity me. He didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly. That explains the ghost, he said. I waited for sympathy. It didn't come. He asked, Do you still love the kid? I stared at the table. Yes, he said. Then the problem isn't love. I frowned. It feels like it is. He shook his head. The problem is you think love means sacrifice without limits. I whispered. Doesn't it? He leaned forward. No. Love without boundaries is self-erasure. The words landed heavy. I breathed out. I've been disappearing, I admitted. My phone buzzed. Lena's name filled the screen. I silenced it. Caleb raised an eyebrow. That her? I nodded. I asked, Are you going to answer? Not today. He sipped his drink. Good, I blinked. Good? He shrugged. You're allowed to choose yourself. I laughed softly. I don't remember how, he smiled. You're learning. The phone buzzed again. A message appeared. Here, he wants to see you. My chest tightened. Caleb read my face. The kid? I whispered. Yes, he said gently. Then go. Not for her. For you. I drove with my hands shaking. When I knocked, Lena opened the door with swollen eyes. She whispered, Thank you for coming. I stepped inside. Where is he? She pointed to the couch, jumped up and yelled. Dad? The word hit like lightning. He wrapped around me and laughed. You disappeared, he said. I hugged him tight. I was sick. I lied. He frowned. You look better. I smiled weakly. I am better. Lena watched from the hallway. I didn't look at her, stayed on the floor and built towers. With him, until my knees hurt, he tugged my sleeve and asked, You're staying, right? I swallowed. I'm visiting. His face fell. Why? I whispered because grown-ups are complicated. He thought about it and nodded. Mom says that too. I forced a smile. She's right. He leaned against me. I missed you. I kissed his head. I missed you more. Lena's voice trembled. Can we talk? I stood slowly. Later, I said. He waved a toy and shouted, Don't leave. I knelt again. I'm not leaving forever, I promised. The promise felt like glass in my mouth. Outside, Lena grabbed my arm. Everything is falling apart, she said. I pulled free. Explain, she whispered. He contacted me. I froze. Who? You said. The name I never wanted to hear. The father. The word twisted my stomach. I asked, What does he want? She cried custody. I laughed bitterly. Of course he does. She shook her head. I can't fight him alone. I looked at her. You're not alone. Hope flashed in her eyes. I finished, but I'm not your weapon anymore. Her face collapsed. Please. Help me, she begged. I stepped back. I helped for years, I said quietly. She sobbed. I'm drowning. I answered, I drowned first. She covered her mouth. You're punishing me. I shook my head. I'm protecting myself, she whispered. He'll take my son. I closed my eyes. He's not property, I said. He's a child, she screamed. He's my child. I opened my eyes. And I loved him, I replied. That doesn't give me ownership. She sank to the ground. I need you. I turned away. You needed honesty, I said. You chose fear instead. The real father called me 2 days later. His voice was smooth. You're the husband, he said. I answered. I was. He chuckled. We should talk.
Hi.
I met him in a parking lot because I didn't want him near my life. He leaned against his car and said, You did good raising him. I stared at him. Don't thank me, he smirked. I'm taking responsibility now. I stepped closer. Responsibility isn't a jacket you put on when it's cold, I said. He shrugged. He deserves truth. I replied. So did I. He studied me. Are you going to fight me? I breathed slowly. No. Surprise flickered across his face. That's it? He asked. I nodded. I'm done fighting wars I didn't start, he said. You're just walking away. I answered. I'm walking toward myself. He laughed. That sounds noble. I stared at him. It's survival. He extended a hand. No hard feelings. I ignored it. Take care of him, I said. My voice cracked. He hesitated. I will. I walked back to my car without looking at him again. That night I sat alone and whispered, I still love him. The room didn't argue, I added, but I love me too. The sentence felt new and fragile. I repeated it until it sounded real. I understood something I'd been running from. Love didn't disappear when truth arrived. It changed shape. It demanded space. I pressed my hand to my chest and said softly, I choose to live. The words didn't erase the pain. They didn't fix anything. But they drew a line between the man I was and the man I was becoming. And for the first time since the truth broke open, I felt steady enough to stand on that line without falling. The courthouse hallway smelled like old paper and cold air. I sat on a hard bench with my hands locked together. Lena stood across from me, twisting her ring. She whispered, You don't have to sit alone. Oh, I answered, I'm not alone. She looked confused. Then what are you? I met her eyes. I'm calm, I said. The word surprised both of us. She stepped closer. I'm not calm, she admitted. I nodded. I know. Her voice shook. Please talk to me before we go in. I took a slow breath. We already said everything, I told her. She shook her head hard. No, we didn't. I stayed. Quiet. She grabbed my sleeve. I'm sorry, she said. The words rushed out like a flood. I'm sorry for the lie, for the fear, for every second I stole from you. I watched her cry and felt a dull ache instead of rage. Said softly, I believe you. She blinked. You do? I nodded. Yes. Hope lit her face. Then help me, she begged. I shook my head once. No. The hope died. She whispered, Why? I answered, because believing you doesn't erase what happened. She covered her mouth. I'll do anything, she said. I replied, you already did everything. The biological father walked down the hallway, tied too tight, smile, too sharp. He nodded at me. Morning, he said. I answered, it will be. He looked between us. Ready to settle this? Lena snapped. This isn't a game. He shrugged. It's paperwork. I stepped forward. Then finish your paperwork, I told him. He frowned. You're not fighting? I shook my head. No. He studied me like I was a puzzle. Why not? I said, because he isn't a trophy. Lena grabbed my arm. You can't just step back, she whispered. I met her eyes. I can, she cried. He needs you. I answered gently. He needs stability. More, she whispered. You're his stability. My voice stayed steady. I said. I'm his memory. The father cleared his throat. We should go in. I nodded. You should. Lena clung to my sleeve. Please stay, she said. I carefully removed her hand. I'm staying outside, I replied. This is your fight. She stared at me like I'd vanished. You're really leaving, she breathed. I'm choosing not to disappear, I corrected. The door closed. Behind them, I sat back down and listened to my heartbeat. Each thump sounded like a step forward. Caleb texted, You okay? I typed back, Yes. The word felt solid. When the door opened again, Lena walked out first. Her eyes were red. She whispered, It's done. I stood. What happens now? She said. Shared custody. The father nodded once and left without another word. I watched him go and felt nothing. The emptiness didn't scare me. It felt clean. Lena's voice trembled. Can we talk? I gestured to the bench. We sat with a gap between us. She said, I thought you'd fight, I answered. I fought long enough. She looked at her hands. Do you hate me? I considered it. No, I said. Tears spilled down her face. I don't deserve that kindness. I shook my head. This isn't kindness, I replied. It's acceptance. She whispered. Of what? I said. Of reality? She looked up. Do you forgive me? The question hung heavy. I answered slowly, I'm letting you go. It's my version of forgiveness. She sobbed quietly. What about us? I inhaled. We existed, I said. Those years were real. She reached toward me. It can still be real. I pulled back gently. Not like before. Her shoulders sagged. So this is it? I nodded. This is me stepping out of your mistake. She covered her face. I ruined everything. I replied, You changed everything. She whispered, That's worse. I stood up. No, I said softly. It's just honest. She stayed seated crying while I walked toward the exit with steady legs. Outside, he ran toward me from the car and shouted, Dad. I dropped to my knees and opened my arms. He crashed into me laughing. You came, he said. I held him tight. I always come when I can, I told him. He looked at my face. Are you sad? I smiled faintly. A little. He patted my cheek. Don't be sad, I whispered. I'm trying. Lena watched from the curb. He tugged my hand. You're coming home, right? I said gently, I have a different home now. He frowned. Why? Chose my words carefully. 'Cause grown-ups make hard choices, I said. He thought for a second and nodded. But you still love me? I pressed my forehead to his. Always, I answered. He smiled wide. Good. He handed me a small toy car. Keep this, he said. So you remember me. I laughed softly through tears. I could never forget you. He hugged me again. Promise? He asked. I whispered, I promise. Lena called his name. He waved and ran back. I stayed kneeling until the car pulled away. I stood alone in the parking lot holding the toy. The wind felt sharp, but I didn't flinch. I whispered, This is the scar. The word didn't scare me. It grounded me. Walking away hurt more than any revenge I imagined. It tore through my chest and left a hollow space. But inside that space, I felt something steady. I said out loud, "I kept myself." The sentence echoed in the open air. I repeated it once more, softer. I kept myself. The pain stayed, but it didn't own me anymore. I walked forward carrying love, loss, and a small plastic car in my pocket. And for the first time since everything shattered, I felt whole enough to keep moving.